Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film, Only Lovers Left Alive. This is the new film from Jim Jarmusch. It's a different take on the vampire movie, and going on riffs on things that vampire movies usually aren't interested in. That these people have been around for so long and have lived through centuries and have experienced humanity and have a perspective on art and humanity and the world in general that most people could ever dream of, and how they're honestly bored by it and refer to people as zombies and don't really understand people at all at this point. They know almost too much. They've learned everything they could learn. Tilda Swinton's character of Eve can read many different languages and has tons and tons of books, is a very well-read person, more well-read than anyone ever could be. And Adam, played by Tom Hiddleston, has tons and tons of inventions that he's hooked up, and classic guitars, and knows more about music, and has helped compose tons of music. And they're kind of just stuck on Earth. But I think the real genius of this film is mixing that with a Jim Jarmusch hangout movie. Kind of a chilled out, not really plot structured film. This isn't your typical Hollywood vampire movie, and I think it doesn't really go the typical horror structure angle at all. He does something different with vampires. Having seen this one week and Under the Skin last week, I have to wonder, since I guess those once B genres have become kind of the top level, the A pictures, the movies that most people care about, these genres can't really live in the B worlds anymore. There's not really any big B directors coming out of those genres anymore. So I think they're starting to go into these kind of more artier directors, and I really kind of like having someone like Jim Jarmusch doing like a cool vampire movie. You have these cool vampire hipsters. I thought at the beginning they might get on my nerves after a while, but it really doesn't, because unlike most hipsters, or the perception of hipsters, or the perception of hipsters that at least annoys me, is they actually have dealt with all these references and understand the context to them, and they're not just superficial references. They really dealt with all these people. It's more references of life than references for reference's sake. Jarmusch almost finds a way to make a cooler Jim Jarmusch movie that I don't think he could if these weren't vampires. I don't think you could really get away with this in the way he does. It almost works better for him because of that, and it gives it kind of an interesting quality, because he's saying things about kind of eternity and living too long and really existentialism by having these characters just hang out in this movie. You're not sure in which direction it's gonna go, but I kind of pleasantly went along for the ride. I wasn't really like, oh, where's this gonna go? I'm confused. I was kind of okay with watching these characters just hang out. And at the beginning of the film, you just have Tom Hiddleston's Adam character, who's like a reclusive rock star, and he tells his wife, Eve, who lives in Tangier, and he's in Detroit, and tells her to come out to Detroit, and she takes night flights because she's a vampire, and eventually comes with him, and then they just kind of hang out. And the movie doesn't really come into any sort of conflict or anything until her sister, Mia Wagowska, I think, I can never get her name right, until her character comes. But there's no real like action of someone sucking someone's blood or anything like that, because they get their blood from doctors, a doctor played by Jeffrey Wright. Tilda Swinton gets her blood from another vampire played by John Hurt in Tangier. It's really just kind of like this chilled, like safe existence that they've made for themselves. They have lots of money, they've existed far too long, and they're not really sure what to do with this existence. So it's kind of a weird movie, because in a way, like, I was surprised how into it I got while I was watching it. I got really into it, but it's almost like I'm having a hard time compressing it in my brain, because it's just such a different kind of vampire movie. It's such a odd way to take the vampire genre, but it's an interesting way, because I think he almost got vampires in a way that you would never think to do that. He seems to be having fun with it, but at the same time, it's very meditative. It's a very well shot film. It's shot by this cinematographer who I haven't seen the other films he's worked on, which I kind of regret, but it's a Yorick Lee Sooks. The way he shoots Detroit or Tangier and bathes it in darkness and uses the available light sources that are there kind of almost has like an old film noir-esque way, but in kind of more of a newer French digital camera way, if that makes any sense. And I like how they kind of make it look like they're kind of cool moodier hipster, someone who's really earned all this knowledge about art and literature and film and TV and everything. You go to their house and they have all this stuff all over the place. Tom Hiddleston's character feels like the ultimate one. Tom Hiddleston, who I've liked him in the Thor films and the Avengers, but I think in this he's playing a less playful character, but he's very good at playing this reclusive vampire rock star who doesn't really want to be bothered with any of humanity, is kind of sick of it. It plays off really well, and him and Tilda Swinton have amazing chemistry together, and I was like, wow, I never thought they really would, but Tilda Swinton feels like she's a very knowledgeable woman who loves making references from her past. They're both having a lot of fun, but still being relaxed at the same time. It feels like they're kind of on a permanent vacation that they can never really get out of, and they have no like purpose in their lives, and they don't really want purpose because they almost understand what that purpose is. It feels like they've overthought everything that could possibly happen. They were very captivating. Jarmusch isn't a favorite director of mine. When I was in art school, people loved Jim Jarmusch, and I was never as into him, although I love Stranger Than Paradise and certain films of his, but this has to be one of his better films in a long time. It seems like he found a way to reinvent himself to make his style work again, and work as well as it used to. Sure, yeah, maybe he could make his riff on a mumblecore movie, but how interesting would that even be? With this, he's found a different avenue to go into. He's found a fun genre to play in. This film feels very like a French vampire movie. I do kind of think of it as kind of an existential take on the vampire and not making them like these big characters. And certainly with Tom Hiddleston, you could make him kind of like a Loki kind of character, make this big, more Hollywood, more audience-friendly film. But this, it feels like Jarmusch isn't really even interested in that. I like its demure, subtle way about itself. Much like Under the Skin, I think it's cool to take ideas that were mainly attached to genres and so inundated with that genre they couldn't release themselves from it, and for directors to take, like in Under the Skin, take an alien film or with Only Lovers Left Alive and do more of an arty idea, more of a European art house view on that is really interesting. And I think it says more about how a director can really take on an idea and make it his own and do more of an auteur view of that. It's fine being a genre studio director, and I don't have a problem with that, but I think this film, specifically Only Lovers Left Alive, really shows what a real auteur can do with vampires. Bring out the best of what makes Jim Jarmusch Jim Jarmusch. This film has like a kind of real cool sense to it, and vampires haven't felt cool in a long time. They felt like cool for being really popular at Target, but they didn't feel cool like I could go in the back of a record store and talk about a vampire movie. Vampire movies, I think, have a good history, and there are always some good vampire films out there, regardless of what's going on and regardless of what's popular or whatnot. And this is kind of one of the more interesting vampire films I've seen since at least Let the Right One In. Jarmusch picks two actors who have such a unique look about themselves. They have kind of offbeat, good looks. They both played major villains in major big blockbusters, but I think they use that in more of a subtle, interesting way. It plays off of the old European vampire stereotype, and I think this is like one of the few films that like really questions like what the point of it is, but we're gonna keep going anyway, I guess. Let's just kind of hang out. That's the cool thing about Only Lovers Left Alive. I guess I couldn't really describe a plot. There's not much of a structure or anything. It really hangs out very well in a very good Jarmusch fashion, and I think he really kind of came alive in this movie with some really interesting actors. I was kind of surprised how much I like this film as someone who's not as into Jarmusch. The way it kind of flows through everything that's going on, you know, it has a good flow to it. The film just kind of flows into itself in a way that I haven't seen a lot of art films really do. It's not interested in wowing you, you know, it's not interested in blowing you away. It's interested in just chilling out with you and thinking about all these ideas and playing with ideas that Jarmusch himself likes and bathing through this kind of interesting nighttime cinematography and kind of eventually going to this kind of semi-ending that wraps up nicely, but you know these characters have to keep going for eons and eons after you and I will never be around. As learned and cultured as they are, it's more futile than the existence of humans because we eventually get to leave and these characters don't, and that's permeated through this entire movie in such a beautiful way. A good meditation on the genre and a good meditation on morality from two people who are technically immortal. So if you have seen Only Lovers Left Alive and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.